I've got Bill, who's off the screen right now, our producer. We need to add to our intro by roughly about 7 minutes.
Yeah.
I have time to go over onto social media and post that the show is beginning. So if you can take care of that, appreciate that. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Dead Air Live, the Dead Air Full Spectrum channel. Here on YouTube, we are simulcasting with KGRADB.com, KGRA on YouTube and KGRA on Facebook. My name is George Lopez. I say this every week, and all you guys all know me inside the chat. You guys are saying hi, George and Ken, before we even get started. But with me, as always, Mr. Ken DeCosta up in the great state of Rhode Island. I hope you guys are having a good final weekend before the holiday. Got your shopping all out of the way, fighting the traffic and all the insanity, and then you can kind of just relax. So a lot of people, just a 3-day work week, which is wonderful. And then you get, I think some of you people out there have like 14 days off after that, all the way through the year. Must be nice. Must be
some
nice.
of you people.
Yeah.
You know who we're talking to.
So
doesn't look much like Christmas up here, though, aesthetically anyway. No snow, which, if I never saw another flake in my life, would be too soon as far as I'm concerned. Get off my lawn, snowflakes.
Well, you're preaching to the choir here. There's something that really kind of takes away from the holiday time frame here in Florida, even Central Florida. I mean, I lived in South Florida for decades, but moved up here 15, 16 years ago. Still the same thing. We're in our low 80s today. Going to drop down to the high 60s tonight. Ooh, sleeping weather. But as far as, feeling that celebration of the holiday and the season, the best of that is the leaves falling off my tree and causing me to have to use a blower every other day. That's about the extent of what I have here.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's age, but there's like a constant effort right now. It's like I'm looking at this and saying it's December 19th. Geez, Christmas is next week. I got to get going here. I got to start, ramping up the spirit and everything like that. And it's not because we're, not in the festive spirit or the mood or anything. It just kind of like one day begets the next day, begets another day. And it's just kind of like, I remember the last couple of years, I'm like, oh crap, it's Christmas Eve. Oh, yeah. Good. Got to pack up stuff and go visit people.
Yeah.
Harumph.
Good luck with all of that. Thank you all for joining us. Welcome once again. For those of you first-timers that are coming here onto Dead Air Live, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Also, the thumbs up and the reminder bell. The most important thing is to hit that subscribe button. Again, you get that no matter if you guys surf YouTube like I do for cooking shows and for movie reviews. You go right through them and you never stop to do that. But I bet on those movie reviews and on those cooking ones, you don't spend 2 hours. First of all, if you're watching a 2-hour cooking video, you're watching the wrong video. It should be 7 minutes or less, as far as I'm concerned.
We need a telethon. We need the subscription equivalent of a GoFundMe. Like go subscribe me or something. We're looking at 350. We need 350. If everybody in my family would just hit that button, we'd be all set. So if there's anybody in my family out there, I'm appealing to you directly.
Critically important for Ken's family cohesiveness that all of you hit that subscribe button without question.
Cole in your stocking, baby.
A very special guest going to be joining us here in just a second. He's a author. He's a public speaker. He is a good friend of the Dark Zone. Sam Baltrusis is going to be joining us here, talking about hotels and inns and experiences that both Ken and I have been able to share in the past, and would love to talk about it with our very special guest tonight. I've decided once again, I got to let everybody know that when it comes to coffee creamer, I'll always turn in my man card. Get ready for this one, Ken. Cinnamon Toast Crunch coffee creamer. Yeah.
I'm just going to
Envy
let
me.
that sit right there and brew and
Can you guys
fester
can
a
you
little
smell
bit.
that? Smell that
Yeah,
cinnamon toast crunch.
it
Perfect for
has
the holiday season. It's good.
that certain kind of soft ambiance about it.
And I'm still trying to find things on TV to keep myself occupied. Again, when it's 80 degrees, it's too hot to go outside. I'd rather be in the house where the air conditioning is. I'm just trying to torture you Northerners. But I've been watching on Disney Channel. I've been watching Hawkeye. Spectacular. Hawkeye has been a great
Like it.
show. I cannot. As many times I've been watching the seasons, Succession on HBO, I can't grab it. It's just a bunch of filthy rich people having rich people problems, and there's no protagonist. There's nothing that's there for me to grasp out to and say, boy, I hope they win. I hope that Kendall, the one son, you feel sorry from time to time, but everybody there is just scumbag. I know it's won a lot of awards. There's great acting in it, great cinematography, great location shooting. They're all over the world with this, and the musical scores. And I know they've won a lot of awards. But I just can't grasp the premise. Have you seen it yet, Ken?
I have not. I'm not an HBO guy because I cut that cord a while back. We're just doing streaming. I refuse to pay for it. So because other than the series, it's pretty redundant when it comes to movies. Everything is just repetitive. So um I don't know. You had me at Hawkeye because entertainment wise, like sometimes I like to just take this off my head, put it on a coffee table, and just say, entertain me.
Yeah.
There are certain series that I get into, usually Netflix series. A lot of them have to do with, it's kind of why I like Hawkeye because it's almost like sort of a cop show more
Yeah.
than, explosions and buildings and superpowers and all the rest of it. It's almost like a procedural type of show. And I enjoy those type of things, whether it's Manhunter, or
Right.
some of the true crime series on Netflix where there's some really bizarre and interesting stories. So,
Yeah.
I don't
And
know.
and on Netflix, I finished season 3 of Lost in Space. Again, it's supposed to be a new take on the original series, and but a good special effects, and season 3 had a good ending to it, so not bad whatsoever. And then, of course, one of the most incredible shows I've ever watched, Money Heist, which is all in Spanish, Spain Spanish, Castilian Spanish,
Mhm.
but just a brilliantly written show. So, there's things out there that I enjoy, but Succession, can't do it. Speaking of Succession, we we would like to bring our guest on at this point in time and talk about the success of what he's done with his books, the work that he's done in the paranormal, and what he continues to do. And I'm looking forward to him being on with us for the first time. So, Ken, if you'd like to do the honors.
I would. Sam Baltrusis is our guest, and he's written more than a dozen paranormal themed books. He's been featured on several national television shows, including Travel Channel's A Haunting, Most Terrifying Places, Haunted Towns, and Haunted USA. Last year, in 2020, he appeared on several other programs, including Paranormal Nightshift, Hotel Paranormal, and Forbidden History. And he currently hosts a podcast called Haunted Hotels and is recognized as an authority on that subject, which brings him to us tonight. So without further ado, let's bring on Mr. Sam Baltrusis.
Hey
Hey.
guys.
Hey, there he is. Hi, Sam. What's going on?
Hey, not much. You guys saved me from Santa Land. I've been working with Santa Claus for the past couple of weeks, so this is a nice little
Really?
break.
How is the old guy?
He is. He's kind of. It's been a tough season with COVID. He's got to wear a face shield for photos, but yeah. So it's been definitely a different season, but we're managing to make it through.
Yeah, we saw him yesterday. He and Mrs. Claus were walking up one street over from us. Not sure. I suspect they were coming from a local pub, but I can't prove that.
Probably.
But it was very nice, and the kids who were driving past, everybody was honking the horn and waving to the kids. So I thought that was very generous of his time on this part, because he's just in so many places right now. It's amazing.
It's a lot of fun. It's great to see the kids light up. It's been such a tough year and a half, and to be able to have some sort of kind of normal, even though we're all covered with masks and face shields, it still has. It just feels good to kind of get into the holiday spirit with covered in plastic.
I'm surprised that it took this long before Santa could figure out put that face shield on. Probably when he's flying through the air in that sled, that would be a nice with a little windshield wiper. Take care of any problems like that. So
yeah, that's a good idea. I'll pass it on to him.
Surprising to me. So, but no, thank you for coming on with us tonight. We really appreciate it. I know you got a busy schedule as can be. What's been going on with you lately?
Well, I've been really busy with the 11th season of A Haunting. So in addition to writing books, I'm also a television producer. So I worked on season 11, actually was on season 10 on the 100th episode. And so I've been working on that for the past 8 months, and we're looking forward to having the season premiere of season 11 of A Haunting coming out on New Year's Eve.
Fantastic.
Wow.
Fantastic. Is that going to be one of those marathon things all day, and then at 9 p.m. we see a new episode? Is it that kind of format?
Yeah, so there are a lot exactly. So it's going to be multiple episodes, including my episode called Provoking Evil. So the premiere is 10 p.m. Eastern time on the Travel Channel. Also, is going to drop on Discovery Plus, the streaming platform. And then my episode, which was called Provoking Evil, is coming on at 11 p.m. Eastern time on the Travel Channel. So you can kick into the new year with ghosts.
Yeah, absolutely. A Haunting, again, I'm going to this procedural type of shows. Kind of one of my favorites out there when it's done well, when they have a great story to tell and they have some people portraying the protagonists, the subjects of it. Really well done. The guy who did you, Sam, just to let you know, he looks nothing like you.
I thought he did a great job. My mother is sort of like my ultimate critic, and she's like, Sam, she's Southern. She's like, Sam, out of all the people that played you, I like him the best. And I'm like, all right, Mom. So my mom gave him a thumbs up, but she knows him from all the ID. He's on a lot of on the murder shows or the true crime shows on the ID channel.
Yeah, I know. It's just like,
I love
Clooney,
those shows.
Clooney wasn't available, so.
Right, yeah, George Clooney. We needed someone like that wasn't as expensive, I guess.
Yeah, for sure.
So we want to get into the topics of hotels and inns, something that you're very, very familiar with. And, there are so many different directions that you could go as a writer, as an investigator, as a public speaker, from the asylums to the hospitals to the cemeteries. And everybody out there has that particular interest, that focal point and that includes even people who have a focus on certain pieces of equipment. But this seems to be a particular passion for you as far as the hotels are concerned. How was that developed? Why was that something, or is it just it's much more comfortable than an abandoned asylum?
Well, for me, I mean, I was a journalist for 20 years before I became an author of paranormal themed books. So a lot of my journalism was like either investigative journalism or our true crime. But I also did a lot of pieces on hotels. So I would travel all over, so like a lot of travel pieces as well. And then when I started writing books, I actually ended up working at multiple hotels while writing the books, because I found that doing the overnight shifts at a haunted hotel actually was really complementary to my writing schedule. So I've actually worked at a lot of the hotels that I've written about. And as a journalist, I believe in immersion journalism, and I also believe in that as a paranormal investigator. You can't get a true idea of what a location is all about just by spending one night at that location. You have to spend weeks, months, maybe years at a location to really get what's going on there paranormally and also historically.
Yeah.
Ken?
Yeah, I mean, when we think of hotels, we think of places, and in the years that I've been doing this, the years that you've been doing this, there are certain locations that are the hot spots of the paranormal. They could be theaters, hospitals, asylums, penitentiaries. Hotels are on that pantheon. They're on the Mount Rushmore of haunted locations. So I guess getting this out of the way to begin with, what is it like those other places? Because this is a place it's typically a getaway. It's a place of vacation, of decompressing, but yet these particular locations hold a certain paranormal ambiance that is second to none. So what is it about these particular places, holding them up to the mirror of these other places, that makes them so active, makes them so haunted, just sort of is a catalyst for all the stories that surround these places? What do they hold that other places don't?
Ken, when it comes to haunted hotels, it's sheer numbers. I mean, if you think of a hotel that's been around for 100 years, we're talking hundreds of thousands of people stayed at that hotel, and they're going to leave a little piece of themselves, if you will, at that location. A lot of what I find at hotels, it's more residual in nature when it comes to the types of hauntings. So you get reports of seeing, like, it may be shadows darting by, or the typical lady in white walking down the hallway. There's always an elevator story at these haunted hotels. So I really think that, of course, it's a little bit of both. It's both intelligent and residual. But I think that because of the sheer numbers of people that do all sorts of things when it comes to, people get married at hotels, they propose at hotels, they also kill themselves at hotels. It's a high suicide rate at hotels that's not talked about. They jump out of windows, they take an overdose, and then also just natural deaths that happen there too. So there are both good and bad things that happen at these hotels, and it leaves a psychic imprint in the hotel and inn.
Yeah, I mean, the stories are myriad. Revolutionary War heroes, jilted lovers, people that are suffering some type of heartbreak. Interestingly, when you talk about suicides, that seems to be, for whatever reason, the cause de célèbre at these places are suicides. And I kind of theorize a little bit that suicides are kind of a sterilized environment. If someone has decided that it's time to take their life, they will go to a location as a sort of disconnect with their own surroundings, their own homes, because they don't have an emotional attachment to it. There's no pictures on the walls that they're able to reference or maybe hesitate. It's kind of, as I said, kind of a sterile environment, or a generic environment that they have no attachment to, and that seems to be what draws them to that. Agree or disagree on that?
I agree with it, but I also find that, as someone has worked at multiple hotels, I think it's also too, if it's committing suicide, it's also, they want to get away from whatever they're running from or whatever the situation. So this is sort of like a escape from reality, and they have like the last days at a beautiful hotel. Right. And so I think it's because they're not emotionally connected to it. But I also think that some people also are drawn to a hotel because it gets them away from their reality, which is something that they're trying to get away from.
Yeah. And so that begs the question, if it's that type of environment that there's really no emotional attachment to, this is just a rhetorical question, I guess. Why would they remain there? Why would they choose to? Is it that sudden release of energy? Is it trauma? Is it the event itself? I guess we'll have to speculate on that, but what do you think?
Well, I mean, having spent a lot of time at these hotels and seeing the people, there are people that a lot of times people actually sometimes live at the hotel. So it's not just a one night only kind of thing. But they're people that that stick around generally do have an attachment to the hotel, whether they built it, which is the case for the Parker House in Boston. Harvey Parker is supposedly haunting the location. I'm a big believer in thought forms, Ken, and I think that we talked about this before too. I think a lot of what one perceives as paranormal activity at a lot of these haunted locations are actually manifested through thought forms or tulpas, and by telling the story over and over again, whether it's the lady in the white dress or Harvey Parker, who allegedly haunts the Parker House in Boston. Is it really Harvey Parker's disembodied soul, or is it something else? Is it something that's been created by people talking and telling a story over and over again and giving it energy?
Yeah, and that is such an important point, and I want to dive into that a little bit. And I'll give everybody a prime example of energy at a place that may have influence, because this door swings both ways. And I'm talking about this location in Los Angeles, California, the Cecil Hotel. And of course, we know about the Eliza Lamb story, which I think is not anything more than a poor, unfortunate young lady who was experiencing a mental break at that point in time. But yet it's legion and legendary for the amount of people who have taken their lives. So I guess it's a two-headed coin, Sam. Is it because they go to that place because of the history and it draws them in, or do they go there and somehow the energies around the place somehow psychologically affect them?
I mean, I think it's a case by case situation. I think when it comes to the Hotel Cecil, I think that there's definitely a lingering energy there. I mean, I have gone outside, I haven't gone inside, and I actually wanted to write a book on that location, but it's been closed for a while. Of course, other TV shows have been able to get inside. I guess money talks. So they'll be able to open the doors if they throw a large sum of money toward them. But for me, I was interested in the energy, and I do think that there's an energy there that that's like inexplicable, maybe a little bit on the darker side, and that could be from the neighborhood. It could be from the land. The land. It's a bad part of town, and there's been a lot of a disaster and
Skid Row,
buggings and all sorts of things.
Yeah. A lot of times, going back to the collective consciousness and creating entities, and this is, I know, something that George has been diving into for years and years now, how our collective energy, how our collective conscience plays a role in perhaps manifesting something in the spiritual, in the physical world. And you alluded to that a little bit before. Have you seen, or is there an example that you can point to at any of these locations you've been to, read about, research, where you point to that and say it's probably more prevalent in that location than it is anywhere else?
When it comes to a thought form?
Yeah. Is there a specific location that you say, yeah, I think people are bringing a lot of that in, or is it pretty widespread?
Yeah, so I think one location that I spent a lot of time at, because I worked at it in Salem. I worked at a hotel Salem, which was not supposed to be haunted because it was an older building that was converted into a boutique hotel, and so that's not the Hotel Salem, but yeah, it's a hotel in Salem. but that's, I think, the waterfront. But yeah, so the hotel was. Right next to it is where the lady in the blue dress has been spotted by multiple people. And we tell this story over and over again on tours. And I was a tour guide in Salem for about 10 years. And she was sort of the star of the tour. And the whole backstory is that back in the 1830s, a woman who was wearing a blue dress was waiting by the building for her lover. She was pregnant, and she was going to tell her lover that she was pregnant. She told the story to him, and he supposedly flipped out, and he shoved her against the wall and killed her. And how she was killed has been told different ways. Some say that she was stabbed, some say she was bludgeoned to death with an object, others say that she was shot. But the thing is, there is no lady in the blue dress. There's no backstory to that. we tell the story in Salem over and over, but there's no historical proof that she actually ever existed, except for the manifestation of what looks like a woman wearing a blue dress at the Rockefeller's building multiple times. So I do think that Salem is a prime example of thought forms or tulpas or egregores that are all over Salem. And I think a lot of the hauntings are actually created by people telling their story and fueling that energy.
Yeah. And like a lot of places, we love to categorize things as intelligent, residual, demonic, poltergeist. We do love our categories in this field. But this is one of those places that there seems to be a combination of things, residual, because someone's in their room and they see the woman in white, the obligatory woman in white, pass through a room, go through a wall. They find out it used to be a doorway there, and you're seeing an imprint in time. Basically, they're not acknowledging you. They have no knowledge of you. You're just tapping into some type of dimensional being. And then you have the intelligent types. And the thing that's always fascinated me about these places are the emotions or the empathy that some of them display, because oftentimes in some of these places there seems to be a specific person that's targeted. It could be a mother, a married couple, I don't know, sometimes females, sometimes males, and sometimes some of those encounters actually validate the stories heard, like, for instance, a jilted bride in a specific room, and then males in there, feel someone get into bed with them or stroke their hair or vice versa, or a baby being comforted in a room or something like that. So it kind of suggests there's a combination of those things. And in some cases, they don't have happy endings. There's anger or a desire for retribution. So those emotions kind of come through, and I know that you've probably encountered a lot of that in your research as well.
Yeah, when you talk about the woman hopping in bed, with men, we have a story at the Wayside Inn in Sudbury, Massachusetts. So Jerusha Howe, she supposedly was a jilted woman, and she supposedly hops in bed with men or with people at the hotel. And she's been on shows before. When I say she's been on shows, she's been investigated by paranormal TV shows and kind of oddly sexualized. I mean, like, I don't understand. I feel really sorry for this woman, as someone that's identifies as clairvoyant or sensitive to the paranormal. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I think that these tropes, I think that there may be a Jerusha Howe. I mean, she may actually, there actually was a Jerusha Howe. We know she actually did exist, but is that her ghost hopping in bed with people, or is it sort of wishful thinking?
Yeah. Before I bring George back here, I want to get into a question because we've already got questions in chat for you. Thirsty Tom has a question. Very pertinent. Do you think tour guides and companies should stick to truthful history in comparison to the more colorful tales they tell? And I know that you're just the man to ask this question to.
Yeah, that's a great question. And, I have been a tour guide on and off in Salem for almost 10 years. And some seasons I actually haven't been doing it because of COVID. But I'm a big believer in debunking the myths and misconceptions associated with Salem, especially Salem, because there's so many myths and misconceptions. But I also think that the lady in the blue dress, another example, when I gave tours in the Boston Harbor, heading to George's Island for a season, and we talk about the lady in black who supposedly haunts George's Island. And people love her. I mean, they love the ghost, and they love the lady in the blue dress in Salem. And it's almost like they expect you to tell that story. And when you tell people, like, by the way, Melanie Lanier, who is the woman that supposedly is the lady in black, didn't exist, they flip out. So I'm open to sort of kind of telling the truth and saying this is what is real, and this is what I can dig up as a historian. But I also think that there's a especially with specific ghosts, that you have to tell the story, or they kind of people will have, there will be a backlash. They want that story.
Yeah, I think there is a way of giving people the truth and yet still being engaging and entertaining And if you pick the right kind of stories, they're very compelling. So there's an art to that, but it's just so rampant now in the ghost tour community where things, get ramped up. And unfortunately, it's a bit disrespectful for those entities that have passed. But you do a great job of it. And we're going to get back into some specific locations here when I come back. But right now, I'm going to turn this over to George for a little while. Go get him, George.
Thank you, Ken. A very special guest tonight, Sam Baltrusis. And I had a lot of the same background as you, but a lot of it right next to water. I was in Fort Lauderdale. I worked for years at the Sheraton hotels, the Sheraton Yankee Clipper and the Sheraton Yankee Trader. The Clipper was where Joe DiMaggio and Marilyn Monroe had their honeymoon in the suite there.
Cool.
And then one of the DoubleTree hotels on the beach. And as far as tours, I was one of the captain tour guides for the Jungle Queen, which is a boat that goes down the river in downtown Fort Lauderdale. But with regards to the hotel working front desk, again, what you're talking about with the reasons and the rationales why people go to hotels and stay there. I mean, sometimes they're scarier than ghost stories. They really, really are. But on the back of what Ken was saying earlier about energies and what I was saying about collective, if a certain hotel in a certain area has had a track record of violence, a track record of prostitution, a track record of gambling, do you think, from what you've done with your research and with your writing, that the possibility, Sam, that does kind of compound on each other? In other words, just amplifies that type of repetitious energy in a location?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a good example is a hotel that I recently worked at. It's called the Adams Inn in Quincy, Massachusetts, and they called it the Murder Hotel. And I had multiple things that happened there as not only as a night auditor, but I also had an event there, the Mass Paracon in September. And it turns out that is where Whitey Bulger actually, like right outside of the hotel, is where he dumped several of his victims. And so Whitey Bulger, for those that don't know, he was a notorious gangster in Boston. And I was like, why is this location so active? And why is it called the Murder Hotel? And it's because of the whole backstory with Whitey Bulger, but there was other illicit activities that happened at that hotel as well. And I do think it almost like leaves a scar at the location, and you can feel the energy there, and almost like it kind of pulls in the nefarious activity. It's also by the water too, which I think amplifies the hauntings as well.
You find yourself a lot of these times trying to find out the geographically the ley lines for an area, or the type of stone that either the building was built with or lies upon, and of course, again, close to any type of body of water. Are you tend to find a pattern with that?
Yeah, I mean, like a great example is the Stanley Hotel in Estes Park, Colorado. It's built on the geographic. I think it's limestone. I think limestone or quartz, but that does serve sort of as a amplifier of paranormal activity. And you see that the geography does play a role in a lot of the hauntings, specifically at hotels. And I think that some locations are sort of built on haunted land, if you will. And like, I think Salem is a great example. You mentioned possible ley lines. Well, the hotel that I was talking about earlier with the lady in the blue dress, there has been multiple people that believe that there is a ley line that goes right down Essex Street, which is the heart of Salem, Massachusetts, and it's called the Judge's Line. And it actually traces several of the victims of the Salem witch trials with several of the judges. And at the very end of the supposed ley line, there is that's where the Gallows Hill was. That's where the hangings took place in 1692. So I do think that there's something about the land, and I think that whether the land is stained with blood or the land just has a lot of energy and serves as sort of a conduit for paranormal activity, is something that I'm interested in as a paranormal researcher. But I also think that that's not as someone that writes books about this. I do focus on that to a certain degree, but I'm also I want to tell their stories and tell their stories correctly. I am, I'm a journalist, so I've interviewed hundreds of people about their paranormal experiences for my books, but I also interview the ghosts too and ask like, well, hey, what really happened? And so I basically use that technique, and it actually works in some cases.
In these particular establishments, when we're talking specifically about hotels and inns versus those investigators who go to abandoned hospitals, abandoned asylums, they go out to cemeteries, or again, even such as Rise of Paranormal does a lot of residential cases. But in this particular setup, when it comes to hotels, do you have an idea percentage wise, especially you're doing investigations, especially you're working there, and night audit is tough.
It really is, yeah.
I
But
never
I
wanted to
love
grab
night
that
audit.
ship.
I really do.
It's so
something
quiet.
about it's very peaceful.
It is, except for the one or two crazies that come downstairs.
Yeah.
But the question I wanted answered is, do you think you are looking at a higher volume of intellectual or intellect from, how do I want to word this? Not so much that it's a ghost or an echo, but it's actually a living, intelligent spirit that you're communicating with. Which one's a greater percentage?
I would say residual, probably, like from my personal experience, I would say it's very high percentage wise. I would say 75 to 80% is residual. To give you an idea, for even at the Adam's End that I was talking about earlier, where Whitey Bulger dumped his victims, there was a woman a female spirit that would walk down the hall and seen by multiple people. She would head out the doors and head out to the water, and it turns out that's where her body was buried. And so I think that was residual, but the fact that you saw her on a regular basis, maybe she was a spirit just sort of wanting people to know her story and who she was as a person. And because it's such a recent crime, I couldn't write about it because it's even though it's a well-known case. I'm a big believer in also writing about stuff that happened 50 years ago, and this actually happened right at 50 years. So some modern cases I have not written about because of just out of respect for the family. But I do think a lot of it's residual in nature, and I think it's not all bad. It's of course the suicide murders are going to leave a psychic imprint on the location, but it also it's positive stuff too, like proposals and like the Omni Parker House in Boston. That's where John F. Kennedy announced his candidacy for when he's going to run for president, and that energy is still there too. You can feel the energy. There's also the Charles Dickens mirror, where Charles Dickens would say the Christmas Carol over and over and over again, and it left a psychic imprint on the mirror. So I do think that hotels, from my personal experience, it's more residual, and it's also more positive. It's not all gloom and doom. It's not like The Shining at every hotel that I stay at.
No, but I think, again, we always have to, and I know you do the same thing too, because you're always experimenting when you're doing investigations. Again, I've seen some of the things you did with Lizzie Borden house and with the Conjuring house. What we're looking at for this point in time is trying to be paranormal chemists. What are the ingredients that make for the perfect repetition in capturing residual events? Whether it is the type of stone that either the building is built upon or built with, the ley lines, the weather, a full moon, what possible other things can we constantly look at? And what are you looking at as an investigator to say, okay, I know if I'm going to go to the Stanley Hotel and I'm going to go to room 401, I'm going to try to see if I can get something repetitively to happen. And it's not being done enough, in my opinion, in this field, that they're not looking to find out what creates the perfect storm to allow us to see a free-floating apparition that is residual, or hearing a voice that is residual. We've not achieved that predictability to this point in time. Are we getting closer, Sam? Is there a possibility in the future we could possibly read this like tea leaves?
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason why I work at hotels. In addition to the fact that I like working the night audit, and it's also conducive for me writing books. You got to spend a lot of time at these locations to kind of capture residual haunting specifically. If you're there just one time or one night, you may or may not have an experience. And so by working, working 4 nights a week at a location and spending that time there, you're going to have those personal experiences. And then you look at, okay, what caused that to happen? You look at the time. Okay, this was at 3 a.m, which is in the case of the woman that would walk down the hall at the Adams Inn. It also was on specific, like, the weather was an issue. It was closer to a full moon. Like, I look at those factors, but again, I'm not in the same school as you and Ken. I'm a researcher, but I'm more about getting the stories correct and finding out who the woman is. And
Sure.
I don't want to prove that ghosts exist. I know they exist. I don't need to prove that. I want to get their story and tell their story correctly.
Yeah. Well, again, and as we bring Ken back on here, I know he has a question. I guess maybe I misexplained that, but it is a starting point as far as from an investigative standpoint. If in fact we can eventually predict residual, would there be a possibility then to move forward and predict the intelligent appearances, the intelligent responses? And this is what we're constantly striving for: is better connection.
You two have been paranormal investigators for a long time. Have you found the secret sauce to create a residual haunting? No, I mean, no one has. It just kind of happens.
Oh, residual haunting, no, but intelligent haunting, you'll have to talk to Ken about that.
Okay.
Or watch a show from 2 weeks ago, one or the other, with Cody and Satori. It's groundbreaking what's happening right now, and Cody and Satori, Sam. I know you do. Groundbreaking what they're doing right now, Mr. DaCosta.
Yeah, we want to jump in here with another question for you, Sam, and probably in your capacity as a clairvoyant who goes into these places and experiences these things. From Erin Bush would like to know, what's your preferred way to ground and protect your energy when on location?
So I'm really big about grounding, and so I do sort of like a white light of protection coming from above and encircling me. I have these are selenite harmonizers that I use, so I kind of do a grounding ritual outside. It's really important to be outside in the grass. I mean, I like to, whether it's the Lizzie Borden bed and breakfast or a hotel, I like to ground before I go into a haunted location. And so I basically do the white light of protection, but I also do other things like I burn Palo Santo. I am definitely more woo-woo when it comes to my protection, because I've been burned. I mean, I've had an attachment that nearly killed me. So I have to, everywhere I go, I do what's called a crystal shield of protection that I do when I walk into a haunted location.
Now, a lot of these places, as the paranormal has come into the forefront of our pop culture now, a lot of locations, some do, some don't, they embrace their paranormal history, and it's become something of an industry now, where a lot of people maybe wouldn't go to a specific place, but now they do. They ask for a specific room, and it's hard to get, the haunted rooms in a hotel because they're booked literally months in advance now. When you go into these kind of locations, what are the challenges really that you face as a researcher, where you're trying to tell the story, trying to get facts, but you may be in a place where those facts are at odds with what that location, for lack of a better word, is selling? Their selling point. There are a lot of them out there that have a lot of these things, but where is that delineation as far as, what they will accept from you that may be contrary to what they're telling everyone?
So I think before I get started on that, Ken, there is a misconception that hotels they make a lot of money from the paranormal. I mean, in some cases they do, and they do sort of spotlight their haunted room. But I will say that in more cases it's actually the opposite. I've been told multiple times by hotel owners and by managers that ghosts scare off guests, so they don't want to be known as the haunted hotel. And so that's been more my experience than it has been like the Shanley, which encourages people to visit its haunted hotel.
That immediately comes to mind.
Yeah, and there's several that do the Lizzie Borden bed and breakfast. They make their entire all their money from people that are there to go for the paranormal, but it's not the norm. I think pretty much every hotel that I've stayed at has a ghost story. Whether or not they embrace it it's up to them. And when they do embrace it, however, is it actually accurate? And that's something that I, as a journalist and as someone that it's really important for me to tell the story correctly and to dig for the facts. And so if it does deviate from what they're telling, I'm going to probably tell them. And I think that's sort of my duty, is like, hey, by the way, this actually never happened. And sometimes you'll see cases like the Hawthorne Hotel in Salem, Massachusetts. There was a whole period where they kind of embraced their ghost. But then there was a lot of misinformation about what really happened at the hotel. This is right around the time ghost hunters investigated, and they supposedly didn't find any activity at the hotel. But having stayed at the Hawthorne Hotel multiple times, I know that it's active. And the thing that really frustrated me as a paranormal investigator, they looked at just its stint as a hotel and didn't go like, what was the hotel before the Hawthorne Hotel? And it was the Franklin building that burned down 6 times before it became the Hawthorne Hotel. And so there was a whole backstory that ghost hunters didn't even look at when it comes to the alleged hauntings. And so I think it's important to not just like look at the surface when it comes to the hauntings, but also to look what happened before it was a hotel. Like, what happened to the land? Was it Native American, like whatever whatever. There's always Native American backstory to everything, but were there multiple fires? Was it something that was a Masonic temple? Like, there's things you get to look at that before it was a hotel and see if it actually has an effect on the hauntings.
Well, it's absolutely true, because a lot of locations have been repurposed as hotels. You see that with mansions all the time. You do see it with Masonic lodges. A lot of these things. So digging into that, because we're always looking for cause and effect. It's like, okay, you're saying this place is haunted. Okay, fine. We will assess that. But eventually, somewhere along the line, the question is always why? Why this particular place? Who are these people that may have a total disconnect to the current iteration of this place? But we need to go back. So I think it's a very sound principle in terms of, your approach to it. So before we come up on the break, we had a question here, and you were kind of answering it, but someone want to know what you think of the Hawthorne Hotel. This is obviously someone who might be a New Englander. I know you've spent a lot of time there. You touched on it, but generally speaking, you hear about it a lot. And the lights going on and off, and, all the typical hotel stories. But what about the ambiance of that?
Well, I mean, I have been at the Hawthorne Hotel because I gave tours. So I would actually sometimes go to dinner after at the Hawthorne Hotel. So I spent a lot of time, and I spent a lot of overnights there too. Mm-hmm. And I first thought that it was overhyped. So it's one of the most haunted hotels. Yeah, right. Ghost Hunter says it's not haunted, so it's got to not be haunted. Yes. And then I did an event down in the library, which is downstairs, and I had an experience that what sounded like a disembodied voice whisper behind my ear, and it kept saying "ba," and I was like, what's like? I thought I was a sheep, or I wasn't sure what he was saying. He was saying bar, and so the guy wanted to go to the bar. So it definitely has activity. Whether or not it's related to the witch trials, I don't think it is related to the witch trials. I think it's just sort of like the psychic imprints that we were talking about earlier at the hotel. People love that hotel, and a lot of people were attached to that hotel because they invested in it. The Hawthorne Hotel started by multiple investors, and it wasn't just one person that created the Hawthorne Hotel. So those people are going to stick around. They want to see that what they built and see, kind of check in and see how people are doing.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of times with these places too, the reputation precedes them. And unfortunately, when you have people traipsing around the hallways, waving equipment around at 3 o'clock in the morning, one has to be cognizant that we have other guests here too, who are trying to enjoy the surroundings and get a good night's sleep because maybe they're travelers and they're stopping over. So, I mean,
I will tell you, Ken, like it happened multiple times. For example, the Parker House was very open about its ghost. And then, like you said, people would be 3 a.m. with their, their K2 meters walking the halls and doing EVP burst sessions in 3 a.m. And they banned paranormal investigators from that location because of that. So if we're going to go in these hotels, be respectful to the other guests at the hotel, both the living and the dead.
Yeah, but I'm hearing footsteps coming down the hall. I wonder who that would
be. Shouldn't that be somewhat expected, though? In certain townships, for example, Salem or St. Augustine or Savannah or New Orleans, that their history is just immersed in spirit activity, in ghosts. They celebrate it for that matter. And so when people go to these places because it's beautiful and it's got pristine beaches or they've got fantastic restaurants, the buzz is still going to be out there. They're going to be seeing ghost tours going around in those areas. There's got to be somewhat of an expectation. But yeah, there is a certain expectation for peace and privacy without question. And, some of these hotels don't do typical paranormal investigating unless they're having an event there in which all the investigators are going to be out till 4 o'clock in the morning, such as the Stanley Hotel. But there should still be that expectation. If I go to Salem, I'm going to be going there expecting I'm going to be hearing somebody outside saying, "Tell us your name. Why are you here?" It's just going to be that way.
Well, I mean, unfortunately, I agree with you. When it comes to when you go to New Orleans, you expect to deal with ghost tours and all that. But I'm surprised by Salem, having given tours there. They don't want to be known for their ghost, and it's almost like a weird New England thing. So you would expect to go to the Hawthorne Hotel and see people investigating it, but the people that run the Hawthorne Hotel, they don't want that. They don't want to be known as a haunted hotel. And you also see that at the Stanley Hotel. They even have a ghost tour, but they can't call it a ghost tour. They call it like a night tour because they don't want to be known as a haunted hotel, even though it's one of the most haunted hotels in the country. So I think it's sort of like this weird, like, like they will like kind of gear towards sort of the niche paranormal community and embrace its ghosts, but everybody else, they don't want them to know that it's haunted. It's weird. It's kind of like a double-edged message, a mixed message.
Well, the town of Salem, Sam, it wasn't but a few years ago, if memory serves me, they were trying to get rid of all of this stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And the backlash they faced from just retail and store owners. I mean, this is like a bread and butter thing, particularly all year round, but obviously, particularly in October with the haunted happenings and everything. There was quite a backlash and an uproar for that.
Yeah, I mean, Salem is definitely weird. Like it makes its money from its witches and ghosts, but they wanted to be known as a maritime destination, and there was this constant rebranding going on, and people like me, they didn't want me to write books about the ghosts. They wanted me to write about the maritime history in Salem, and when I say they, we're talking about the people that focus like the mayor's been pretty open-minded when it comes to the paranormal, but it's the other people like the brand messengers and the ones that do the social media accounts. And so I feel like it's changing. They're like, you know what? We're haunted. We're wicked haunted. As they say, and let's focus on the ghost and let's be ghost friendly. So they're starting to open up things that they haven't opened up before. Like they had an exhibit of relics related to the Salem witch trials that to me was like the holy grail when it comes to items from the witch trials, and they had it on display at the PEM after about 30 years of being in storage. So they're starting to slowly kind of embrace their ghost and their backstory as the location that it was responsible for the death of 20 innocent men and women.
Correct.
Yeah, it's still, to me, I mean, if you're going to do that, especially in a place like Salem or St. Augustine or Savannah, almost like for smokers now, this is a spirit-free establishment, and just post that out front. We won't have ghost hunters booking in.
Yeah, but but it's almost like that they're okay with those people, but they don't want they want the smokers to hide in a room, in a different room. They don't mind catering to the smokers or the spirit seekers, but they also have 80% of their hotel that's there for the sites, the tours and other things, the history. So it's almost like they're trying to do a balancing act, and they don't want to be known as a haunted hotel, but they will to that percentage, that niche percentage.
Final question before we get to break here, and this is just something off the top of my head, especially for somebody like you who's worked in hotels and has also done tours. How simple, and I'm not talking about gullibility here, I'm talking about eagerness, would it be for a particular hotel that wants to reroute that traffic, that paranormal traffic, and say all the activity happens in ballroom D? So if you guys want to book in there, we can fit 10, 15 investigators in there each and every night. But that's where all the activity happens. And people, gullible, will be more than happy to go in there and do their investigations and run their sessions in that one solo location. Because if they're told that that's the story, they're going to believe in it out of eagerness. Would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, you see that at Stanley Hotel. Like, they don't want anything to do with the paranormal, yet they have a ghost tour. And so they send the people out. There's a music hall that is very haunted, but it's away from the guest. And that's where people go in and investigate. So they almost send them out to the remote location that's vacant for the paranormal experience. So, hotels are doing that, actually. They're kind of like, oh, that's the most haunted location because they want you to go there. You also see, I mean, look at all the haunted rooms at all the inns, like the Concord's Colonial Inn. It's always the most expensive suite in the inn. And like the haunted room in Concord's Colonial Inn is room 24. And that is, that room is double the price of the other rooms at the hotel.
Yeah. If there was a triple murder in the basement of the Lizzie Borden house, and that's where all that took place, people could sleep peacefully on the third floor. Wouldn't be a problem whatsoever.
Yeah.
I
I think, and of course, we're applying this to hotels tonight because that's what we're talking about. But you could also apply that same thing to restaurants, to any kind of location where there's some type of alleged activity. So certainly it's not the sole property of hotels by any stretch.
All right, Dolly Belfour, quick answer: no, Jungle Queen was never haunted. So we're going to go to our break right now, guys. And if you see, the call-in number is right there on the screen. We'll put it up on the other side of the break also. Our very special guest, Sam Baltrusis, is going to be joining us for the second hour. Stay with us. You're watching Dead Air Live on the Dead Air Full Spectrum channel. We'll be right back.
Hello, I'm Tony Rathman, one of the hosts of KGRA's Monday night show called Entity Voices Paranormal Evidence. If you have not had the opportunity to see this show, I would like to take this opportunity to invite you. We cover fantastic paranormal evidence captured by our Entity Voices team, as well as bringing on experienced and up-and-coming investigators who share with us incredible paranormal captures.
This one, I will let you give an intro to, because this actually was in a castle, and this one is titled Energy.
Oh, okay. I was in a place, my favorite castle in Scotland. It's called Balgony Castle. Beautiful place, and as a matter of fact, it's going to be one of the places we ghost on the tour. Everybody was talking, and we had a Frank's box there, an actual Frank's box sitting there. And everybody was talking, and finally, I just asked a question, and we got a pretty good answer.
Here is that clip. I love this one. This one's awesome. Here it is.
Is there anything in the castle that we should be afraid of?
Wow, that's
Very
all.
clear.
Yeah, the energy. You
Very-
know what I love about that one is the response is right after the question. So timing to it. The relevance of it is not only answering the question, answering it appropriately. You asked, is there anything to be afraid of? It clearly said the energy. The other thing I love is it has an and accent. I don't want to pick which European accent, but there is an accent. So let me play that one more time.
It's definitely a Scottish accent. Definitely.
Okay. Here it is again.
Is there anything in the castle that we should be afraid of?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
What's even more amazing about that is
watch us live on kgradb.com on Monday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern and 6 p.m. Pacific Time. As a special bonus, if you enjoy Entity Voices Paranormal Evidence and would like to support the show and the entire KGRA network of shows, please use promo code 21EVPE to receive a 30% yearly discount to Entity Voices Paranormal Evidence and the entire network of shows on KGRA. Thank you. And we hope to see you in the chat room Monday nights for Entity Voices Paranormal Evidence. And don't forget, stay haunted.
We had the privilege, all of a sudden I'm a yodeler. We had the privilege last Monday to be on Entity Voices Paranormal with Tony Rathman and Chris and Lorda. I mean, everybody there was great, Ken, and we had a good time for 2 hours.
People.
Did any of you in the chat show up for that interview? Because if you haven't, you definitely have to go back and check it out. We had a great 2 hour time frame and showed some great evidence that Ken brought and not so great evidence that I brought along the way too. But welcome back for the second hour of our show. Our very special guest tonight, Sam Baltrusis. Let's bring him back on with us at this time. And want to thank you, Sam, for spending your last Sunday before the holiday with us and ditching Santa Claus to come be with Ken and I. That's awesome.
Yeah, I'm like, bye, Santa. I got a dead air to do tonight. He's like, what? And I'm like, dead air.
Yeah, very festive, very festive. What do you got going on in the background there? I'm seeing flashing lights.
Oh yeah, so that's my trickery lights. You know, the holiday. I'm just trying to kind of spice up the backdrop.
Okay, I was just hoping it wasn't me. You know what I mean? It's like I'm seeing flashing lights. You know.
It's our favorite word, orbs, right? So it's like orb. No I'm kidding.
Ooh, orbs. It's like, there'll be people now saying they see faces in it.
Yeah,
you see what you've created.
You're gonna matrix someone's face behind me. Although I will say that I have had stuff follow me home, so I wouldn't be surprised if someone actually did see something peeking around my shoulder.
Want to remind everybody in the second hour, we'll get the number back up there. If you have a question for Sam or us or a comment, please feel free to call in. Our number 855-472-5483. So, Sam, I wanted to get into specific locations. Some of them are very familiar to us here in New England, but there are others. But I wanted to tell a very, very short story. I don't get that ooby-dooby thing where I walk into a place and I feel the vibe. You know, there have been very few times because I try to block out what I have heard about a place and not let suggestion be a part of my process. Kind of check it at the door and just go in, treat the place as a space. The number of places that I've walked into that just felt weird. One of them that ranks up there is the Hollywood Roosevelt Hotel in Los Angeles, California. I'm going to attempt to perhaps get a picture of it up here as soon as I can. Let's see. so everybody knows what I'm talking about here. I'm not sure I have it. Oh, well. But the Roosevelt Hotel is a place that the most famous ghost there is said to be Marilyn Monroe. And there is a mirror where one of the staff had seen her reflection in it that's now prominently displayed in the lobby. But room 928 is famous. It hasn't been opened. The ghost of Montgomery Clift practicing his bugle for when he was in the movie From Here to Eternity. But it's one of the few places that I ever went into where I just got a vibe. There was nothing malevolent. There was nothing spooky about it, but you could feel the echoes from the past, regardless of what I knew or didn't know. Just sitting down in the lobby, having a drink, it was almost like being transported back to a different time. Thank you, George. Have you encountered those type of things? And I know it's a more difficult question for you because you feel those things that, you know, typically I don't. But is there a particular location where maybe thinking back for the first time, you walked in and said, oh yeah, there's something that's different about this place?
Well, I mean, just to add to the feeling, so I try my best to kind of like you can. I want to go in and be objective, and sometimes I even try to go in cold where I don't know the history because I don't want to be persuaded by what I've been told is supposedly haunting the location. So getting to the Hollywood Roosevelts, that's a great example of a location that once kind of embraced its ghosts, but then the mirror was actually removed because they didn't want to be known as a haunted hotel. And it seems like that the mirror is back, but it's weird that they kind of go through waves where they embrace it, they don't embrace it, they embrace it. It really depends on the management. But yeah, so I remember when I first walked into the Omni Parker House in Boston, and I gave tours there, and I remember just having the feeling of you can feel history, so almost like it was oozing from the location. And that was the beginnings of me kind of accepting the fact that I identify as a clairvoyant. Because I saw multiple things there and I'm like, oh, that's explainable. That's explainable. And by working that muscle over and over again, it got stronger and stronger. And it always surprises me, people that have investigated for 20 years and they still don't identify, have some sort of sensitivity. It's shocking to me because I know from my experience, by spending so much time at these haunted locations and working that muscle, I became more and more sensitive as I progressed. I have many friends who would say I'm not sensitive, but yet they have those moments. Well, I remember the time walking in that hotel and I can feel the energy at the location.
Yeah, I know for myself, kicking around in a long time, I just do my best to try to be a documentarian, to go into a place, examine, document in different ways, and I try to stay in my lane for the most part. Let's see. I think that we are going to take a quick question and we're going to get to our phones. Thirsty Tom is back. Do you think it's possible for a residual haunting to be created by a living person?
That's a yes. So let me give you a perfect example of that. So I was working at the Adams Inn in Quincy, Massachusetts. This is the place that was known as the murder hotel that we talked about earlier. Right. And there was a woman that I didn't see her the night before, but I was working the overnight shift, and I saw what looked like a woman wearing a blue shirt run down the hallway, and I could see her reflection in the mirrors and also in the windows. And I look over, and there was nobody there, and I'm like, wait a minute. So I go to the elevator to see, maybe she ran back to the elevator because she looked like she was in a hurry. And then about 5 minutes later, while I was heading to the elevators, I saw that woman come down. I'm like, man, were you just in the lobby running? And she's like, no, I was sound asleep. And I had this horrible dream that I missed my flight. I missed a shuttle and I missed my flight to Canada or wherever she was going. And so I feel like her energy left her body and headed in down the hall, almost like a doppelganger effect. And so, yes, she was alive. She's very much alive, but I still saw the woman a few minutes before she actually came downstairs.
Yeah, interesting. Right now, I think we're going to take a call right now because they're lined up here. Ronald in Minnesota is on the line. Good evening, Ronald. What is your question tonight?
How are you doing tonight? And Merry Christmas to you and George and your guest.
Same to you.
Sam, and I sure hope everyone's having a wonderful time. I know this year's been kind of weird. We just had Halloween, and here we are, we're doing Christmas.
Happens every year, doesn't it?
It seems like it went by faster this year. I don't know why. But no, the question I have for all of you, and each of you can give your take on it, and you may have noticed the activity. I have noticed the different shows. There's like a billion shows on ghost hunting. You know, serious research. I'm not talking about the TV, just the TV shows. I'm talking about real serious research, you know, on YouTube shows or on some of the TV shows. You know, there's some serious stuff. But have you noticed that there's more activity in the last, say, 2 years that we've been basically on lockdown due to this incident? Do you think that we've been more aware of the phenomenon, or do you think that we are just recognizing the activity better?
It's a great question. We've dived into this a little bit, but I guess we're yet to get the answer, like post-COVID, if there's going to be more of this. But we'll pose that question to Sam. What do you feel about that?
Well,
Sam?
having worked at a hotel that supposedly wasn't haunted during COVID, during the lockdown, I would say that the activity actually ramped up, but we didn't have any guests, and so the activity definitely got amplified throughout the whole time I was there, to the point where it got scary for me. Like it was like a scary energy at the hotel. So I do think it amplified. At a lot of the locations that I normally visited, like the Lizzie Borden Bed and Breakfast in Fall River, multiple times, it to me was more active during the lockdown. Like the U.S. of Salem was more active during the lockdown too. It was almost like it was hungry for people and interaction. So I would say based on anecdotal experiences, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
If you're getting scared, Sam, what's in it for the rest of us? If it's scaring you, we're all in trouble.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, for me, it was scary when you see a shadow figure wearing a hat, and like anything with a hat man related, I'm terrified of that.
Oh yeah.
Ronald, did you have anything to follow up with?
I had bad storm on Wednesday. You know, we had a tornado blizzard. You know, like Kentucky had of course, nothing like what Kentucky had, but they had the tornadoes, and from that we had the storm come up this way, and we had a big tornado warning, and we had kind of a blizzard, like 40-mile-an-hour winds, and we had snow, and power was out for almost 3 hours. And you know, my house has activity in it. I can't explain it. I'm not saying what it is. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's my imagination or what, you know. But anyway, I've noticed things happening that I can't explain, and I'm not going to go all in and say, okay, it's got to be something. You know, I'm just going to be with an open mind and non-skeptical, and from a research point of view, and really try to figure out what the energy is, but without investigating my own house. Okay, now that's key. But to research the activity and to understand what I'm dealing with, I need to know. Okay. Now, the funny thing was, during this almost 3 hours of no power, I was thinking, oh shit, we're going to have something happen tonight. I know it, but nothing happened.
It's usually the way it goes.
Yeah.
Well, Ronald, thank you. Thanks for calling in, buddy. It's always good to hear from you.
Ronald, I have a quick suggestion for you, Ronald. You have a missed opportunity here, and it falls right in the topic of our show tonight, Ronald. What you should probably do, if you have an extra room in the house, is rent it out as an Airbnb only to paranormal investigators.
There you go. Hey, I got room here. You can come on up here and bring your own bed, though. I don't have any extra beds. You got to bring your own.
There you go.
That's fair. That's fair.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, Ron, take care.
Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. All right.
Thank you. Happy holidays, Ron. Good to hear from you, buddy.
Yeah.
Quick question in chat for you. Erin Bush is back. What is your least and most favorite hotel/bed and breakfast?
Wow.
I would say for me personally, like the one that I loved going to was definitely the Stanley Hotel in Estes Park, Colorado. My little brother was not so little. He's actually 6'5", so he's not little. But he moved. My youngest brother moved out to Stanley, Boulder, Colorado. I spent a weekend there, and it was amazing.
Yes.
I do think that the activity there has been sort of like dramatized because of The Shining. It was inspired by Stephen King's stay there, in the 70s, and people automatically expect there's a really negative energy there, and it's actually not negative at all. It's very positive. So I enjoyed it, and the Stanley Hotel is one of my favorites. One of my least favorites, I don't know if I should say this, but for me is when you take a location that is a murder scene and you turn it into a bed and breakfast or to make profit from it, and you do it disrespectfully, and you turn it into like a carnival. To me, a location that and Lizzie Borden is a good example. I'm related to her. She's my cousin. The fact they turned the bed and breakfast into sort of like if it's going to be a location for for actual study, I'm all for it. And to learn about the history and what happened in 1892, or if you're going to turn it into like a carnival, that's when I have a problem with it. So I don't want to go on the soapbox. I have major issues with what's going on there.
I'm going to say that having been there many times,
several times, right, Ken?
knowing the people on a personal level, I'm done. I'm pretty much. I wish everyone the best, but I know for me, I'm done because it is not. You're going to have to go a ways to find people that were as invested emotionally and invested in terms of the research and the history as the people who have since left there. I guess we can leave it at that. Yeah. But it just doesn't hold what it once did for me personally.
And I mean, not to go, I just feel like that we know the people that work there, Ken, and they were good people, and they really wanted to get the story correct. And I felt like when I went to the Lizzie Borden breakfast that it was in good hands. I don't feel that right now. And so I miss it. And I miss the opportunity as a paranormal investigator to bring my I had multiple events there, and we had some amazing evidence that came from that house. So I just think that it's an opportunity that I wish came back, and I wish we could have that opportunity that was, many years of going there. And I know, Ken, you've been there multiple times too, like way more than I have.
Well, Danielle, Sue, Deb, you're
fantastic tour guide.
You're not going to see guides and docents like that.
Yeah.
Again, so whatever
it means.
I know.
Yeah.
God bless.
And as far as the Stanley is, Ken, can you put that picture back up again? Because I know exactly what Sam means by how incredible that place is and how much he loves it. Now, I went there probably 15 years ago or so. So from that picture, if you come out the front door, if you're in the lobby and you come out the front door, directly in front of you, majestically, are the Colorado Rockies. It's just breathtaking to see when you walk out from that front lobby door. Thank you, Ken. But the other part, we went there when TAPS was still having their events there, when Jason and Grant were going out there. I think the one was in November, and it was 18 degrees, freezing cold. But I think just where it was at, the beautiful scenery inside and out, just really kind of made it almost movie-like, similar to the hotel from The Shining. It was just a beautiful place. I love that place.
I mean, that's why it was created by Mr. Stanley, because the mountain air was something that was going to help him. Sam, was it TB? I'm not sure why he built it.
He had tuberculosis. He had health problems, definitely, and so he felt like it was almost a therapeutic thing. But I will say this, like I actually got sick from because of the altitude. So I got altitude sickness out there. So be careful when you go to the Stanley.
Mile High.
Yeah.
We're going to jump on because Joseph from Massachusetts has been in queue right now. We'll get to his call before we move on. Joseph, you're next on Dead Air. How you doing tonight?
Hey, how's it going?
Going well, my friend. Happy holidays.
Look at that heavy accent from Massachusetts, man. That's heavy.
Massachusetts guy.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, I wanted to meet Sam when he came to Fairhaven, but sorry, I must have missed you, dude. Couldn't get a ride.
Wait, where?
Oh, you were in Fairhaven at the Monster Expo convention?
Yeah, I actually didn't go to the Fairhaven Monster Expo. Oh. Yeah, I was booked that whole month, so I actually didn't go.
Oh, it's a good thing. I was disappointed I couldn't meet you, but hey.
That explains that.
Yeah. Just when we get off the air, Joseph, just give Sam your address. He'll come over and stay at your place for a little bit.
Sure. Yeah, I'll come over and introduce myself. Yeah, I mean, so Joe, I've done so many events, but October I was overbooked, and it was just too much for me. And also I mean, this is personal, but my dad's dying of stage 4 cancer. So I have been going back and forth to Chicago. And I don't announce it on Facebook, but it's hard being doing what I do as an author and as a television personality, and also dealing with the fact that I have a dying father. So please forgive me this year. It's just been tough.
Question: as far as your story goes, did the haunting get it right, or what did they get right? What they did not get right, or?
Yeah, so Haunting got my story correct. I mean, as a producer now for Haunting, I feel that they do amplify what really goes on when it comes to paranormal activity. I do think it's a TV show, so I do think that some things were I would say altered to make it a little bit more TV friendly. Like, for example, my friend Joni. In the episode, I have an attachment that nearly kills me after doing kind of like a. It wasn't really a seance, but it was a Halloween event in Salem, Massachusetts. So I got an attachment that nearly killed me. That did really happen. The things that didn't happen were like me getting like having my friend Joni come over to my house and banging on the door saying, "Sam, what's wrong?" That never happened. She actually reached out to me on the phone. Or actually on Facebook Messenger. So some things were altered, but I would say 95% of it actually did happen, and it just was a little dramatized for the TV show.
Yeah, and you're referring to Joni Mahan, of course.
Joni Mahan, yep, yes, and she and I talk. We kind of laugh about the woman that played her in the recreation, because she was like, didn't look like Joni at all, and she was like really aggressive. Joni's a really sweet woman. She would never like bang on my door, "Sam, let me in," which is how they portrayed her in the show.
Yeah, I know, because the young lady who portrayed our friend Andrea Perrin in The Conjuring, I've seen pictures of her lately. I said, "My God, Andrea, you are smoking hot." You know that? Like, wow. I think, all right, Joe, thank you for the call, buddy. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Joe.
All right. We'll take one more, Bill. Bobby, I believe, from Louisiana, is on the line. Hello, Bobby. You're on with Sam Baltrusis.
Good evening, and hello to the chat. And Sam, sorry about to hear about your father. I lost my father to liver cancer in 2017, and it can still put a tear in your heart by missing like your parents and stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So my question is like, Sam, before I give you the question, are you an investigator, paranormal investigator, or no?
So I do investigate, but I'm clairvoyant. So when I go into a location, I actually think of like Chip Coffey, Amy Allen. I go into a location, I read the location. So I investigate with investigators that validate what I pick up.
Okay. If there is any paranormal device you would love to have in your possession that could be your favorite, what could it be and why?
All right, so I love my dowsing rods, and so I have my dowsing rods with me now. But I think when it comes to actual devices, I actually have been using the Estes method a lot, and I know a lot of people don't like it, but I use it differently than the way that they did it So it's basically using noise cancellation earphones, a blindfold, and a Spirit Box 7. But I have this a regular Spirit Box that I use, and you kind of spew out what you hear. As a clairvoyant and as someone that's sensitive to the paranormal, I don't say exactly what I hear. I tweak it. I say what I'm picking up, and I use it to channel the spirit. So I think for me personally, it's the Estes method for right now, and that will change, I'm sure, eventually.
Yes. So with the blindfold method, how does it feel to have this blindfold method? How does it? Do you see ghosts or hear ghosts, or what's in the blindfold method?
Yeah, so the blindfold is sort of like deprivation. So you're not seeing people ask questions or hearing them ask questions. So what happens with me, I go into a trance. So I'm almost like I'm in a room with that person having a conversation. So the blindfold to me is a way to help me get into that trance. And so you see black, but then I go into I see like mind pictures. So I'm actually going into the room with the spirit. Or that's what it feels like for me.
So it's like BR, but it's like BR, but you can definitely if you can see the ghost if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah, so I'm clairvoyant, so I see. So I definitely see them. I don't always hear them. That's clairaudient. So I will. It's like charades with me. They'll do they'll kind of say something with their hands, or they'll gesture something. It's almost like a puzzle that I have to figure out.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Yeah, VR. So yeah, it's the ghost hunting version of virtual reality, Bobby. That's basically what that is.
Kind of, yeah. I mean, that's a good analogy, definitely.
Without the sword, so. Bobby, thank you so much for calling in.
Yes, Merry Christmas.
Thank you so much. Merry Christmas to you too. All righty. Louisiana. I don't think that's our first call out of Louisiana. That's rare.
I'm waiting for I'll have a surprise from across the pond coming up in a couple of weeks, but we got to let somebody we got to make somebody stay up until 3 a.m. to get us. So, Sam, I wanted to ask you about one particular location here that you've definitely visited and written about, the Colonial Inn in Concord. And I'm going to get a picture of it up here so everybody who might be in chat watching the show tonight knows exactly what it is we're talking about. Now, on the right side, it was once owned by a doctor. I think his name was Minot.
Minot, yep.
Minot, yeah. And this goes back to the Revolutionary War, Battle of Lexington and Concord. Soldiers who were injured were brought to this home to be cared for. And what's now, I think, the Liberty Room was a hospital. And I think room 24 was where they were operated on. And then those who didn't survive went down one floor, I think. It's room 27, and that was the morgue.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so I stayed. Yeah, so I was actually at Concords Colonial Inn on Friday, so I was just
cool.
there. And every time I go, I have something happen to me. But yeah, so the side where that's the room 24 and room 27 is the hospital wing, and that's where I generally stay in room 24, and I see what seems like a residual haunting of a soldier coming out of the bathroom of all places, kind of crawling on the floor. And it's almost like that loop that we were talking about earlier. And I don't know what triggers it, but it happens every time that I'm there. So I will see the soldier coming out of the bathroom. But the other side actually has an interesting history as well. That is where Ami White, who you may not know as a person, but he actually was, to me, a major player during the American Revolution. And just to plug my book, Ghosts of the American Revolution, just came out. But yeah, Ami White killed a British soldier at Northbridge by basically scalping him. This is right after the siege of the skirmish at Bunker Hill. Not Bunker Hill. Concord, Lexington, like right by North Bridge.
On the bridge, right?
Yeah, and so Ami White lived there, and Ami White, we're not sure if he killed him out of, like sort of like as to protect himself, or he actually did it almost like a like a mercy killing, or he did it to protect himself, or he just did it out of anger or stupidity. But the British said that he was savage and he actually killed the wounded man, and it was just an act of savagery. It was a sign of the Patriots doing what they did. He, however, said that he was defending himself, and so it had different approaches to it. Well, Ami White, in my opinion, still haunts the other side of Concord's colonial end, and the soldier still haunts the other side of Concord's colonial end, and they want their story told. And so I've been focusing on that, Ami White's story. And there's also Henry David Thoreau. His aunties actually own that side of Concord's colonial end, so not the opposite side of the Dr. Minot's office. And his aunts supposedly haunt that side of the end as well. And so I think there are multiple ghosts there, and I think that the ghost hunters did investigate the location, and actually some of the things that they picked up in their investigation we can debunk. And I like looking at that investigation, and I'm like the door, there's a spring on the door, and there was like one scene where they were like, oh, the door closed because there's a spring on the door, guys. So that, to me, like having been at that location after they investigated it, like it made me lose all respect for TAPS, to be honest with you.
Yeah, we actually stayed in rooms 24 and 27. They were kind enough to offer us a free room if we ever come back. So I guess we made a good impression. I'm going to play a couple of clips, if you don't mind, from room 24.
Cool.
So this was taken pre-COVID, before all of that happened. We were there in February. First clip I'm going to play from 24, we're actually lying in bed with a camera going. In the lower left-hand part of the screen, you will see a motion sensor go on at the same time something is punched in the room. Make of this whatever you will. Room 24, Colonial Inn.
The heck does that thing keep going up for?
That time I heard a noise.
Yeah.
Okay, so what that was inside the room. It wasn't one of those up above, because you know how the floors are. You can hear every footstep.
Yeah.
This is the middle of the night. This was actually in the room, and the motion sensor triggered at the same time. Again, you make of that what you will. Going back to room 24, really quick, we had our entire group. There are only 4 of us, very, very small. We were in that room again and got a response from what sounds like a female, very quick response to a question about just wishing whoever was there was in peace.
Best thing that could possibly happen after everything that went on here is that everybody's at peace. And,
yeah.
You know, so.
Mark audio.
What, that?
No, it sounded like I heard your 3 voices. It was like somebody's at peace, and it sounded like a clear no or something like clear as day.
Can you go back?
Okay, if anybody wants to hear that again, I'll play it, but I'm run through it. Now the open door there, this is the bathroom you were referring to, correct?
Yep. And that activity over and over and over again coming from that bathroom. And it's a soldier, but there's also a woman who's like a midwife or a nurse that I pick up as well.
Someone posited that to us, like, who is this woman in here? And someone said nurse, because I think they did a little background. So we took it for what it's worth. Okay, the female voice that says no, they're not at peace, which is sad, but maybe that explains it.
Yeah, I mean, that's a perfect example of validating what I pick up as a clairvoyant, and you actually have evidence to support what I've been picking up. So that's why I love working with people like you, Ken, because you guys have that evidence where that backs up with what I'm sensing or seeing visually as a clairvoyant.
Yeah, nothing in the room. When you mentioned the hospital room 24, immediately I said, "Oh, good," because I have something to play for you. Let me see. I want to check chat real quick. Even ghosts have to use the bathroom, I guess. Well, okay, that's fine. I guess so.
It's like the haunted bathroom. I'm like, what is up with the haunted bathroom?
Yeah, I know why. But there was some bizarre thing I must tell you without going into, because this is not about me, but there was some bizarre things going on in the bathroom that night as far as lights, and we had the door shut and then the lights would come on and go off. So I don't know if anyone else has experienced that kind of thing, but I must tell you two things. Number one, you step back in time. It is absolutely phenomenally beautiful, and I suggest the Yankee pot roast, which is the best I've ever had.
Oh, it's really good. Yeah, I had that too. It's really good.
Goodness gracious. So another place in Preston, Connecticut, Captain Grant's. You can give us a little bit of background. Kind of an interesting story, but Captain Grant's another great typical New England inn. And I know that you spent some time there as well.
Yeah, so it's another location that I always kind of that I visited before it was on the TV shows, and like I knew it had an energy to it. It almost kind of called me there. But it's kind of like alluding to our earlier conversation. I don't think that the ghosts that are supposedly haunting that location are actually what's haunting that location. I think that it's something else, and I think they have like this whole like Captain Grant and his wife is there, and like we don't know if that Captain Grant actually there may have been a Captain Grant, but his wife supposedly that's haunting the location may or may not be true. But I will say that I had multiple experiences in the Adelaide room, and I actually had there's also the cemetery that's right up back that's in really bad disrepair, almost like a time loss going out into that cemetery. I tried to film it multiple times, and it's almost like it kept cutting in and out while I was filming it. And I felt really weak after going out there too. It was like an energy drain going out to that cemetery. So yeah, and I had a situation where I had I saw a little girl come next to the counter next to my bed, and I had a kind of like a protection rock that I kept next to my bed, and it was missing the following morning. And then I also was missing a shoe. And so apparently it's common for this little girl spirit to take items and hide them. And I was missing my shoe, and one of the owners, Ted, he actually found it a few hours after I left, and he's like, "Oh, that's where she hides all the stuff." And I'm like, "Okay, why didn't they tell me?" Because it was a really nice shoe. Right. But I got my shoe back, so mission accomplished. But it was an amazing experience. It was like traveling back in time, Ken, going to that end.
So this was the Adelaide room.
Yeah, the Adelaide room, and the one that Colette room was the one that I had the missing shoe. And that's another haunted room. I would say multiple rooms the whole inn's haunted. And one of the questions that popped up earlier is it just one room that's haunted? I had multiple experiences in other rooms throughout Concord's Colonial Inn. So it's not just that room, but that is supposedly the most haunted room, and it's the most consistently haunted room. But even the lobby is haunted, and that goes for Captain Grant's Inn as well. And the land is haunted too. There's like stuff around it that has energy, and it's also a stone's throw from Northbridge. So just the whole location's haunted.
Yeah, interesting at the Colonial Inn, and I spared her the embarrassment. But the most grounded of our investigators is a registered nurse, and while we were standing checking in the lobby at reception, her butt got grabbed by someone, and she recounted that, and she's that kind of person that when she says it, she's not frivolous about that. But I have another surprise for you from Captain Grant's. This is the Adelaide room, and this is an EVP. As we open the door and enter the room, we're welcomed. and you'll see what I mean. Come in.
So the what I, as a clairvoyant, there's a child spirit in that room, and there's a woman spirit as well. And I don't think it's the woman that or Adelaide. I don't think it's Adelaide. I think it's someone else. But that sounds like the woman welcoming you into the end.
Yeah, I thought, and that was really cool. Obviously, nothing we heard, and it's just kind of like sounded like someone who's very pleasant. I don't know if it was the owner, or I don't know if it was a member of the former staff or whoever it was, but pretty cool. Let's go back into chat and see if before we get out of here, we've got about 20 minutes or so. If you have any questions, get them up in chat for Sam right now. Before I bring George back in here, is there something, now you've traveled, obviously, you've been to Colorado, you've been to various places. Is there something about New England and hotels, or do we just get a little territorial with that here because we don't know any better? But as someone who's done the research and traveled to different places, how do they all line up?
Well, I do know that New England is notorious about not tearing down its old buildings. And I think, there's the history that dates back, to 1620, but a lot of these hotels are like Revolutionary War, Civil War, on. So I think that New England does have very haunted inns, specifically like the Conqueror's Colonial Inn. But I also think that you see that throughout the country, like St. Augustine, like even California, Colorado. So having done, worked on the podcast Haunted Hotels with Sam Baltrusis, it basically gave me a whole bucket list of all these haunted inns that now I want to visit because I talked to people who have investigated these locations. And like, for example, the Farnsworth House in Gettysburg, I was able to go investigate that with Richard Estep, and kind of like a location that now I love because it's outside of New England. So I do think that New England definitely has more haunted hotels and inns, but they also exist at other historic locations like Gettysburg and like other like St. Augustine. And so I do think that inns are not just New England phenomenon.
Oh no, I mean I know that we stayed on a trip earlier this year. George actually was kind enough to join us on this.
Yeah.
We went down to St. Augustine and stayed at this place, which is the St. Francis Inn, which has its own stories. And we were able to spend a little time poking around. If you were in the rooms, we got the right room because Julie from our group, she's like our booking agent. Somehow or another, she always gets the haunted rooms. It may take a year to get there, but we spent a little time in that room and witnessed some unusual things. I rarely use the P word as far as paranormal. Let's just say unexplained, unusual for now, but glad George was able to share that with us. And George is coming in to share more with us right now.
Yeah, we had a great honestly, though, Ken, let's call it what it is. The scariest part of your trip to St. Augustine was that cobblestone road on the way to St. Francis Inn.
That was brutal. And cars going over that at 40 miles an hour, good luck. Auto repair bills must be astronomical now.
God bless. Yeah. I mean, without question, I can understand that the Northeast, again, a far greater history. Mind you, the oldest plotted city in the United States or in America is St. Augustine, 1565. But, it still didn't have that kind of tourist put up hotels and inns for quite some time after.
I'm actually originally from Pensacola, Florida, and we actually we predated St. Augustine, but we were blown away by a hurricane. So we would have beat St. Augustine as the oldest settlement.
Thank God.
But yeah, I mean, here again, we here in Florida, we have a lot of great locations, and across the country. It doesn't matter where you go. And one of the running jokes we've ever had in the paranormal, what would you do if you had ghost activity in your own home? save money on gas. Yeah, that's the biggest thing. We have places everywhere that we can go and do an investigation to, but it comes back, Sam, to what you had said, and it's an astute comment. It's important to have repetition in a location, to be able to go back in, establish that familiarity, such as what Rise Up does with Pain House, and create that dialogue where there's a comfortability. As crazy as that sounds, but these spirits will, over time, whether it's your energy that they sense or they can actually see you, however they are able to do that. And you know, again, you being a clairvoyant on top of that makes you a bigger beacon when you go into a place. They could probably see you coming a mile away. Oh, Sam's on his way. Okay. It gives, I think, for the New England area particularly, because people are very rooted in that area, more familiarity to these locations. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I mean, like the example of Ken being at the Pain House. Like, I've investigated that house with Ken, and they did respond to him. Like, it's almost like they knew Ken and
Family.
like that he was a friend. And so I do think that is important to have that that familiar, like kind of like that repetition of going to a location multiple times. I have that in Salem. I mean, I know the ghosts in Salem. Like, they're like my friends. Some of them are witch trials victims. And I feel the same way about the Lizzie Borden bed and breakfast. I felt really close to the spirits there. So I do think by having that relationship with the spirits, it almost opens them up to dialogue, and they will start trusting you and communicating with you, whether it's through like a device, a spirit box, or, you know, through me as a clairvoyant showing me, you know, like what they went through. Sometimes I do get clear voices in my ear of what they're trying to communicate. So yeah, I do think having that repetition really does help with us as paranormal investigators and paranormal researchers. And I was actually, when I was at Concord's Colonial Inn on Friday, I was interviewing for a job. So I actually may work at Concord's Colonial Inn starting in like 2 weeks or so.
Good luck. Good luck to
Nice.
you.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I have one quick question here. Because, you know, we're talking about hotels, inns, bed and breakfasts. They're such transient places. I mean, literally thousands and thousands and thousands of people. Are you more apt in your experience to connect with somebody who is rooted to that place, or does it really matter? You might run across somebody who maybe has taken their life, or who, for whatever reason, some tragedy, even though their time there was essentially very, very short.
Well, a good example, you know, you and I, you know, have experiences at the Lizzie Borden bed and breakfast. I mean, there were multiple spirits that were in the house and had nothing to do with the house, and some of them were like different generations.
Yeah, I don't believe it was ever the Bordens, to be honest with you.
Yeah,
I mean, in my experience.
And I mean, I personally like not to go too much in that case, but I think a lot of the spirits that were haunting that house, whether the negative and the positive, were from the neighborhood or previous owners, or and not the Borden. So I do think that that's a good example of a location that had sort of like the name associated with a ghost, but it wasn't necessarily what's really haunting the location. But yeah, I mean, I think that I'm looking for giving a voice to those without a voice, and sometimes it's the enslaved people that are at a location like the Oliver House. You know, I always kind of go to the ones that were you know, either enslaved, the women, the children, and not the white men that, you know, that kind of get all the spotlight on these paranormal investigations. I want to talk to the others.
There's a story there to tell as well.
Yeah, I would like, we only got about 6 minutes left here. I would like for you, if you could, Sam, and we appreciate you again joining us tonight, to bestow upon our audience and really the field, you know, for people who will watch this post live, but the abilities that you have, the honed sixth sense, that you have had dialogue with multiple spirits. There are people out there that will go into a location and maybe don't have that ability, so they're using all their equipment. And because they're talking to strangers, there may be a bit of a wall, a second wall. before they can get that dialogue going. And if it doesn't happen fast enough, impatience kicks in, and then let me start provoking. Explain again the understanding, at least your empathy perspectives of these spirits, and where people should really kind of draw the line and stay on the true north compass, trying to open up that dialogue with spirits at these locations, just specifically if they're tourists in somebody else's home.
Yeah, so it's always about respect. When I'm going in, I go right for the ones that are marginalized. So when I'm there, it's not the loudmouth, aggressive male energy that usually dominates a haunted location. I go for the women that are oppressed or in the corner, or the ones that normally don't have a voice, and that's where you get the information. Like, that's how you get what's really going on at that location. So I would say to go for the ones don't go to the Lizzie Borden bed and breakfast and say, Lizzie, did you kill your father and your stepmother? Talk to Bridget, talk to other people, and go for the ones that you don't go for.
Gotcha. Yeah. Sound advice for anybody out there. And again, everybody's got a story, not just the slave owners, not just the homeowners, not just the supposed killers, but everybody that's passed. And again, with the experiments going on with Rise of Paranormal and Cody and Satori and Ken, mind-blowing to hear some of the responses back from the other side. And usually these messages that are coming across that they want to extend out to loved ones is just, it's so uplifting. And that's something very, very important for all of us in the paranormal field to understand and to practice without question.
Mm-hmm.
Give us some of the information where people can reach out to you, including if you have upcoming events where they can see you at. Again, you've got an extremely busy schedule, and now taking on the role, working at this particular, is it a hotel or an inn, this place?
So it's Concord's Colonial Inn. Whether or not I can actually take the job, I interviewed for the job, but I'm also producing a haunting. So if that kicks in for season 12, then I unfortunately can't work at the Concord's Colonial Inn. But you go to sambaltrusis.com, has pretty much everything, whether it's TV appearances or upcoming events. I do have a couple of events. So I'm doing haunted hotels with Sam Baltrusis, and that's linked on my website. But a lot of that is done at Haunted Inn. So I have one I'm coming up in. It's not a public event, but it's a private event for me and Richard Estep and his team. And we're heading to a hotel in Kansas, Holton, Kansas, called Hotel Josephine. Looking forward to that. We're also doing other inns throughout the country. But yeah, I have events, like bigger events coming up in 2022, like the Sleepy Hollow Paracon. Not sure if I'm doing another mass Paracon. I usually do a large event, but because of COVID, it was really difficult this last year putting on the event. So stay tuned to sambaltrusis.com.
Well, we wish you a happy holiday and a prosperous 2022. Mr. Ken DaCosta?
Yeah, I am looking forward to everything that you have ahead of you, Sam, because, around here we all follow you, and you've got your hands in so many things, producing, writing, and everything like that. So for me as well, happy holidays. I wish you all the best, my friend. And let's see if we can get together here at some point. We do occasionally, but love to run into you again sometime.
I would like that. Can I just have to say I have a lot of respect for you and what you do. So thank you for being sort of the go-to person for the science of the paranormal, or that part of it. You're kind of like, in my opinion, the go-to guy when it comes to paranormal investigating.
Well, kind of words, that is high praise coming from you.
I see how it is. I see how it is. You abandoned Florida, and now you're a New Englander, and I see how you guys back each other up. That's okay.
This is how we roll here, man.
Yeah, I support my Florida friends too. Florida investigators.
We're up against the clock here. Sam, I want to thank you again, and we will again have you back on and talk to you very, very soon. So don't be a stranger.
Thank you. Happy holidays.
All right.
Thank you.
And you as well, Sam. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Super nice guy. Let's see. Well, how come you got to be Big Earl? There we go. All right, guys, that does it for us for tonight. We've got something planned next week, but the guy that we're going to have on has sprawling acres and farmland and really bad Wi-Fi. So we're trying to get this all organized together. So we don't want to, but keep an eye out. Hit that subscribe button, and later in the week we'll be able to announce who we have.
You're not gonna believe it.
Not gonna believe it at all. Thank you, guys. We're all out of time. Have a great night. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next week.